I hope that you have enough energy for this discussion because it is dedicated to energy issues. Um I'm happy to welcome you on this forum and happy to present our to introduce our speakers. It's Maciej Zaniewicz from Poland. It's Mr. Razvan Nicolescu. I hope he's with us. It's Kristian Takac. I appreciated you had this opportunity to connect us, despite all the circumstances. Also, we are waiting for Mr. Book, and I'm set to announce that Mr. Demchenko will not participate in this discussion as there is no electricity currently in the Ministry of Energy. So it's sad irony, but it shows in what circumstances we are passing through now. So, as a moderator, I would like to give a floor to myself. First, because I would like to present our endeavor that we, together with our colleagues, prepared since summer, since mid of summer. It is a research on partnership between the EU and Ukraine in the domain of energy. We were wondering, is Ukraine just a recipient of practices in energy issues, or is it initiative partner in this regard? And we were preparing this research even last year, but since that time, circumstances changed dramatically, and currently we have some new challenges, and they are tough. They need tough response from our side. So Russia is, I think, the most popular word currently on this forum, and yeah, I would like to start from Russia. Russian threat in energy. Russia was is a key thing that moves processes, changes in on energy market in the whole of Europe. Why it is so? Russia used energy as a weapon, and it was obvious for Ukraine and some other Central European states before the February of 2022. But after that, I think each country in Europe realized it, except one maybe country, and I think we will come back to this case later. Russia used energy for corrupting elites, for buying loyalty of governments in Europe, since it was as it was it sold energy with the low prices to Europe and get loyalty and support, or neglecting when Russia was an aggressor in the third countries. But also Russia used energy for preparing its war against Ukraine and for preparing its aggression against other states. As Russia gets money from Europe while selling the gas and oil to European states. That is why it is so important now to cut off these ties, energy ties with Russia, and it's a challenge for whole Europe. Ukraine is now 100% free of ties of energy ties with Russia. Ukraine does not use Russian energy, but there are set circumstances that put ourselves in this situation. When Russia started its aggression against Ukraine, everyone in Ukraine was wondered if the European Union will dare to cut ties with Russia, but the European Commission answered with Plan Repower EU in May 2022, and it declares a task to stop to stop using of Russian gas and oil and coal, all fossil fuels, by 2030. After that, also it was noting that several sanction packages of the EU against Russia were dedicated to energy issues. Particularly, it's the sixth package, which forbid using and buying of Russian crude oil, which is transported to European countries by sea. It's the biggest part of the crude oil, of the Russian crude oil, which comes to Europe. And there are some exceptions for Central European countries: Hungary, Czechia, Slovakia. Also, actually, for Poland and Germany, there were exceptions that they could use Russian oil, which is passing through Druzhba pipeline, through territory of Ukraine, because they are more dependent on this pipeline oil. But Germany and Poland already refused, stopped to use Russian oil. But Hungary, Czechia, and Slovakia still continue to do it because there are no other options for them so far. Also, another EU package was dedicated to Russian coal, and it is sanctioned. Russian coal cannot be used in the European Union, and it was an issue for Poland to have to find alternatives to this Russian coal, but with some objectives and with some problems, Poland and other countries of the European Union found ways to substitute Russian coal. But gas issue is maybe the most problematic issue on energy ties with Russia, as there is Europe. All of gas imports to European Union at the beginning of this year, 40% of them, more than 40% of them, came from Russia, and it's quite sad situation, and it shows that Europe was dependent on Russian gas, and still it is the issue for the European Union how to find enough alternatives to substitute Russian gas. because there are some alternatives, Azerbaijan, Norway, Algeria and other players, but it needs time to build efficient infrastructure to have this have gas from these countries, as well as these countries need to increase their production to sell enough fuel to the European Union. Also, American partners are helping with their LNG, and it is the most popular, I think, way of substituting Russian gas, but still there is an issue with the price of the gas. What is important also with the plan of Repower EU, European Commission declared that it will not postpone implementation of the EU Green Deal, and Green Deal is seen as an instrument of ensuring European Union independence in energy, but as we could see and as we could heard from another discussion, from the previous discussion, European Union with its EU Green Deal is approaching to another dependence, and it could be even more dangerous for the European Union. So this process need to be implemented. These changes need to be implemented very carefully. So what about Ukraine? What challenges does Ukraine have in energy sector now? First of all, Ukraine should be a part of changes in the European Union regarding the cutting of dependence on Russian fossil fuels. But Ukraine itself has a lot of challenges now, and first it's Russian aggression. As we could learn, there is no electricity now in a part of Kyiv, so that is why it shows that it's a real problem for the country, these attacks of the Russian missiles and Iranian drones. It's a problem for energy stability of the country, and as there were several waves of attacks, so there is currently there is also not only a lack of electricity, but there is a lack of details and instruments for repairing facilities. That is why Ukraine needs not only import of electricity from the EU, for example, to balance network, but also it needs some things for repairing its facilities and repairing not in the long-term perspective, but today. And also, previously, Russia targeting its missiles attacks on oil storages in Ukraine, and it was also the issue how to protect oil infrastructure of the country and how to have this enough fuel in the market, both in the market and for the Ukrainian armed forces, because it's a dramatically important part of countries' resistance to aggressor, to have enough energy for army. And another issue is problematic issue is the fact that there are a lot of facilities which are located on the temporarily occupied territories. The biggest one is Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and it is in the hands of Russian terrorists who are blackmailing not only Ukraine but all the world with the nuclear threat, with danger on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and the only thing to insulate Ukraine and the whole world against this threat is to liberate this territory, which means Ukraine needs stable aid, assistance, military assistance to do it. And not to, I would like not to turn this panel discussion into my solo show, and I would like to stop here just to finish my, but before I would like to finish my this speech with the sentence about some sentences how Ukraine could participate in the EU energy processes in the EU energy transition. Currently, Ukraine has the biggest storage facilities in Europe for gas. And it may be used for the EU to go through this winter and following winter to have enough gas for this period, cold period. Also, it's worth noting that Ukraine will lose its status as a transit country regarding the gas, but also regarding oil, because also Gazprom has already decreased its transit of its gas to Europe through the territory of Ukraine. And there is no reason to expect that it will be increased, but also from the point of view of morality, Ukraine cannot continue have contacts with Gazprom as long as Russia is not punished for its war crimes and for its atrocities. That is why Ukraine will not be a transit country anymore in the nearest future, and Ukraine needs to be part of EU energy transition, and also as well as in case of temporal alternatives for gas, for fossil fuels, but also in case of EU Green Deal. So thank you for attention, yeah. I would like to give a floor to Mr. Razvan Nicolescu. Romania was and is maybe Romania is a less dependent country regarding the energy issues than a lot of European countries, especially in contacts with Russia. Romania is capable to produce not enough, but a lot of gas to its homeland consumption. So, and Romania has plans to increase production of gas, and Romania is planning to build a new nuclear reactor. It seems that country has a plan for these hard times. But how do you see main challenges of Romania in regard to energy for the nearest future? Please.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm sorry that I couldn't come to be there together with you. I have two small kids, so I have to spend time together with them. It's a must imposed by my wife. But what I would like to say to you, actually, I was listening to your intervention, and it came to my mind a global vision that I presented a few years ago when I was running to become the executive director of the International Renewable Energy Agency, and it was called The Power of Hope. So all of us in the Ukraine, in Europe, we should keep the power of hope. That good will win against worst, even in the real life, not only in the movies. In terms of energy at the regional level, so we have some short-term problems and some long-term needs or even opportunities. Short-term problems are linked to the security of supply, and you presented the security of supply issues and also the protection of critical infrastructure issues. So it is important to keep the critical infrastructure in operation. What we can do is we should supply Ukraine with the required weapons to protect the critical infrastructure, and also with the required equipment to fix the critical infrastructure that was affected by the Putin's aggression. So people should not suffer. People should not be in a situation not having access to electricity or to heat or to gas. This is, I mean, this is part of being a kind of part of the human civilized world, let's put it like that. So we are not in a barbarian time. People should not be targeted or their basic needs. So that's why supplying military equipment to protect the critical infrastructure and helping the Ukraine with the required equipment to make and to replace the critical infrastructure affected is, in my view, very important on a short-term basis. Then it's also the need to address the consumption. I don't know how the efficient is consumption in the Ukraine, but I know that in my country, the process, for example, to adopt efficient lighting in all the residential parts is not completed yet. So replacing inefficient lighting with efficient lighting could help all of us to be successful with this period, in this period of time, with the energy supply. So this is a kind of short-term measure. On a kind of medium-term measure, I think that we should already start thinking of the reconstruction period of the Ukraine. Ukraine is the country in the Black Sea with the largest potential for the development of wind offshore. Many countries in Central and Eastern part of Europe are the energy systems very centralized. I can tell you that despite of the fact that Romania is ranked as #2 in the Eurostat data in terms of the lowest dependence on imports, the largest investments in the power generation sector in the last 3 years were in decentralized power generation capacities, meaning thousands of people, thousands of small and medium enterprises, thousands of institutions install their own production capacities based on renewable sources. So what we need to do is to work together, the Ukraine and Europe, also for the future. And this, as I said, this should be part of the reconstruction process of the Ukraine. I was a young diplomat in Brussels representing Romania more than 15 years ago, when the first Russian crisis was actually happened, yeah. And I was also involved in the negotiations of the European Union on the Energy Community Treaty with the Ukraine, with Moldova, with Georgia, with other countries. So in terms of legislation, you are integrated. The Ukraine is integrated in the European Union. Of course, in my view, we should have done much more, I mean, to help the transition of the sector towards a more decentralized sector, towards a lower sector in terms of the green gas emissions impact. And this should have been done in relation with Ukraine and in relation with other countries member of the Energy Community Treaty. Also, in terms of the relationship with Putin and with Gazprom, there is progress. Recorded in Europe, but I think we should have done much more to reduce the dependence. When I was member of the cabinet of the Romanian government in 2014, we launched what was called the vertical interconnector, connecting Romania with Greece and giving the chance to the Ukraine and giving the chance to Moldova, giving the chance to Central and Eastern part of Europe to have access to alternative gas supply sources. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how I should put it, the project has been almost completed this year, but with a delay of 6 years. And this is not a major infrastructure project. This is a small, medium type of infrastructure project. So that's why I'm saying that for the current dependence on Russia, some leaders, some European leaders should feel accountable, because we should have had a much higher progress than we currently have. But as I said, we should remain optimistic. We should move towards a low carbon energy sector. Today, COP27 has begun in Egypt. The world is more divided than it was probably ever in the last at least 25, 30 years. But as I said at the beginning of my intervention, we should keep our power of hope that together we will win. Together we will be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Nicolescu. And I would like to give a floor to Maciej. Poland is seen as a prepared country for this transition, the most prepared in the Central Europe, or one of the most prepared, because Poland constructed this Baltic pipe. Poland is developing LNG terminals on Baltic Sea. Poland currently is planning to build its first nuclear power plant. And so, what about problems?
Yes, thank you. Maybe let's rename it not problems, but challenges, because I'm. Yeah, is okay. Okay, I believe that problems you just solve problems and then you can have another ones. I think that this time we have challenges exposed by this crisis, which can be overcome and can be really a huge chance for our also system in the future. And thank you for mentioning natural gas, because I wouldn't like to mention natural gas. Like, it's not, case is not closed, but we are doing quite well. So let's talk about other challenges. So firstly, starting with obvious things, this crisis exposed our dependence on fossil fuels, which means not only that we import them, but also that it can influence everything basically in our economy and our everyday life. Our inflation rate, for example, is now at the level of 18%, which is like, for me, I'm quite a young man, historical. And 40% of this inflation is caused by huge rising energy prices. We have in all of Europe problems with, for example, chemical industry, which is reducing output because of huge natural gas prices. And we had even in meat industry problems with lack of CO2, which is used in this industry. So it's a huge problem we have to face. And we are going, of course, into dependence on Russian fossil fuels. This chart is outdated because it shows that about 50% of natural gas comes from Russia in Poland. It's outdated since April this year, when Russia decided to cut off supplies to Poland, but completely cut off supplies. But still, as I said, we are on a good position here because of LNG terminal in Świnoujście, because of Baltic Pipe, which allowed us to import natural gas from Denmark and Norway. So as for now, situation is more or less stable, much better than, for example, in Germany, when where natural gas is the main issue. When it comes to oil, dependence is even higher, but still we have infrastructure. We have oil terminal in Gdańsk, which allows us even to export crude to one of the German refineries, to make it also independence from oil. But here is on the horizon even more problematic issue, which is oil products. As you probably know, starting from February 2023, embargo on oil products is going to force, and we are still, as a whole Europe, very dependent on, for example, Russian diesel and LPG. And it will be a huge issue, and we can see it already on gas stations. And hard coal, which is paradoxically the biggest issue right now in Poland. Although we are one of the biggest producer of natural coal in the EU. The issue is that we use this coal also for individual heating. 50% of individual houses uses coal to make heat, and we are producing in Poland low quality coal, which contains sulfurs. So it's basically only 50% of this coal used in Polish households comes from Polish coal mines. The rest of it is imported from abroad. It was imported mainly like 90% from Russia because it was cheap and it was high quality. It is a huge issue because Poland imposed embargo on Russian coal even before European embargo, but we still have problems with supplying households. And according to last surveys, about 75% of people who use coal in their households claim that they don't have sufficient coal for the whole winter. And whole supply chains are also stacked, so we have huge problems here, but it is short-term problems which can be overcome. The third challenge is unscheduled stoppages of power plants, which are record high this year. In one moment, 25% of our generation was on the stop and was unavailable. And it's caused mainly because our generation, our power plants, coal power plants mainly, are just old, like 50 years old or more. And because they are also supplied with hard coal. And again, paradoxically, it's the issue because most of these cases of these unscheduled stoppages was caused because of lack of coal. Despite of that, Polish power plants is supplied 90% by Polish coal mines. And it was caused because of the market. Price of hard coal skyrocketed on the European market is this ARA, so it's so it's yellow line here. Of course, it is much lower than the natural gas, but the spread between yellow and black line, which is benchmark in Poland, is so huge that it was economically logical for Polish coal mines, not even to break long-term contracts with Polish power plants and sell this coal abroad. And it was the issue in 2021, for example, which caused that our inventories have been depleted even before. And about solutions, because if we are speaking about challenges, it would be good to speak about solutions as well. So first of all, solutions on the agenda right now are renewables plus nuclear, and these are solutions for challenge number 1 and 3. Of course, nuclear is a long-term project. Long-term means that we are building in Poland nuclear power plant already for 50 years, and we don't have it. And we don't even have projects started, in fact, because there is all the time ongoing discussion about this issue. But probably because of these challenges, you can see now that maybe not collapse, but huge problems in the system are inevitable. This debate is going into specifics, and the technology has been chosen. So it is Westinghouse, American technology, which is, by the way, the same Ukraine decided to choose and to make new 9 reactors of Westinghouse, the same technology, AP1000. So probably also it is the some kind of sphere where we can cooperate, and even representatives of Westinghouse mentioned this last week. And of course, renewables, which is being developed, which are being developed in Poland, but still the problem is that we, for example, we have 10H rule, so-called, which means that generally speaking, building new wind farms in Poland onshore is on land are almost blocked. But again, this situation showed that even government which imposed this rule in 2015 decided to amend this rule and to change it after several years when this situation, when this crisis started to be the issue. And the last one, the most complex chart, which can be in this 2 or 3 words summed up, which is heat pumps plus thermomodernization. Because using these 2 technologies, so increasing energy efficiency of our houses, also installing heat pumps in households can decrease our reliance on coal in households significantly, even in next 5 years. Right now, the number of selling heat pumps in Europe is the most rising number in the whole EU. So it is being more and more popular, and the same should be applied to natural gas as well. We are talking a lot about coal exit, so-called, but I think I'm convinced that we should talk about gas exit as well. Gas should not be the bridge technology, because we can see it right now that our reliance, which would be increased by using natural gas instead of coal, would be too significant, and there is simply no place for more demand for natural gas in the EU, because we already have problems with supply. And on the horizon, we have rising supply, rising demand in Asia as well. So we will have to fight for this natural gas with Asian market, which would mean that this price will be even higher in the future. And there is a place for thermomodernization, for example, in our houses, because as you can see, it is also the issue not only in Ukraine, not only in Hungary, but also in the whole region, including Poland. Dziękuję.
Dziękuję. So I would like to turn to Mr. Kristian Takac from Slovakia. And we also, we already have Mr. Maciej's book. Okay, but sorry, I would like to turn to Mr. Kristian Takac and then to Mr. Buk. Slovakia has its problems connected to Russian gas. When in summer Russia was reducing gas flow to Europe via Nord Stream 1, and Slovakia had some faced some problems, but also country currently is government also announced that country is prepared for this winter, but there is no great initiative, a big initiative, or no big initiative of for replacing Russian gas, or there are no big alternatives to Russian gas. So, what is the strategy of Slovakia for ensuring its independence, energy independence, and what are the alternatives for Russian gas, and also as well as for Russian oil?
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry, I'm in a bit not very convenient situation, but I'm sitting on a bus in Uzhhorod on the border passing, so the conditions are not the most perfect one. So if I'm suddenly turning off my mobile phone, excuse me for that. Okay. Well, the question regarding Slovakia. I think we are relatively well off. We have filled our gas storages relatively well compared to other countries, and we do have sufficient amount of gas. We are currently a lot of gas is flowing actually from the reverse flow from to Ukraine from Slovakia via the Budince and Velké Kapušany entry exit points. So in this, I'm sorry for the interruption. I will just need to raise my hand and get my passport from the Ukrainian customs. Give me 2 seconds. I'm sorry for
that. I think it's totally Central European issue. It's happening now. Yeah. So should we turn to another speaker?
It's okay. It's okay. I got my passport.
Okay. Yeah.
I just left Ukraine. So,
welcome.
Hello from the EU. We are. What I want to say, we are relatively well off. I think we have done quite a lot also in terms of helping Ukraine, not only in gas. As I mentioned, there is quite a lot of gas flowing now through these two entry exit points around, I think, 1,000 cubic meters per day currently. But we also have been quite on the side of Ukraine when pushing for the NSOE synchronization, and we are hoping that that the capacity for import and export of electricity will increase little by little. It has increased over the last few months, but because of the attacks on the Ukrainian infrastructure, the Ukrainian side has stopped the possibility of export to Ukraine. So I think in Slovakia we are standing totally on the side of Ukraine. What we have done as a country to counter the Russian possibilities to use energy as a weapon. As I said, we have filled our storages relatively before in advance of others. We have a significant part of our energy generation coming from nuclear, so we are not in the same position as, for example, Poland. We are kind of self-sufficient in this respect, and we have little by little also increased our share from renewables in terms of electricity generation. So I think the path towards kind of towards reducing further I think it's kind of obvious, even for Ukraine. Of course, first of all, there is a need of military victory and restoration of energy infrastructure. But I think all the trends are there. We will continue supporting also with the new projects between Ukraine and Slovakia and Europe, the hydrogen highway from Ukraine, and of course also the import and export. And we are ready to cooperate also in other areas like energy efficiency. Actually, today I was in Uzhhorod for the Slovak-Ukrainian cooperation, where the businesses met to discuss issues, but also where our Ministry of Economy, responsible for the energy cooperation, met with Ukrainian counterparts, also with Demchenko, Yaroslav, who is probably now on the way to Kiev somewhere. So I'm not sure about the blackouts, but I saw him this morning and he was talking very warmly also about our mutual cooperation between Slovakia and in terms of energy cooperation. So I'm sorry for for having a bit of confused
thank you.
Intervention here at this conference, but as I said, we were just passing the border crossing, and now I'm on my way to my car, so it will be a bit more calmer to listen what you have to say. And thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think thank you for your input, and thanks for this attractive performance. Thank you. And I would like to turn to Mr. Matthias' book. In October, President of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, mentioned that Germany should pass this crisis, and Germany should refuse cut off its ties with Russia regarding energy. And after Germany will pass this crisis, there will be no more cooperation with Russia. There will be no more such dependencies of Germany. Yeah, there will be no cooperation in energy with Russia. After that. Mr. Olaf Scholz, also on the conference dedicated to rebuilding Ukraine, mentioned that Ukraine should be modernized, and let's build a new Ukraine, modernized green Ukraine. So I would like to ask you, what is German strategy for passing this crisis, and how Ukraine can participate in overcoming Germany's problems in this crisis, during this crisis.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for being invited to speak today. So I think from a German perspective, the first issue, of course, is that the starting point into so when Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine happened, Germany found itself in a difficult situation based on decisions taken in the past that went into the wrong direction. I think this is very obvious. We have created enormous vulnerability of our industry, of our households, from particularly Russian gas supplies via Nord Stream pipeline. And now this has been changed dramatically. And the good news is, I believe for this winter, the preparations are quite good. So the storage is almost 100% full, the gas storage in Germany. The gas saving by households and by industry. So households, private households are saving or consuming at the moment 30% less gas year on year compared to average years, and industry around 20%. So if this trend continues, then there's a very good chance that we will pass through this winter without the need to ration through regulatory measures, the consumption of gas. And then, of course, the big challenge is how do we prepare for the winter 23-24? But I think this is a challenge that's not only a German challenge, but for many countries in Eastern Europe, Baltic countries, other countries that are very dependent or have been very dependent on Russian gas supplies. Now, I don't want to really speak about the German situation. I wanted to perhaps comment on what Mr. Nicolescu has been referring to, the need to look at also reflect on the medium term when you're now thinking about the short term. Now, of course, the short term is very much dominated by questions: how do you heat your home when you're attacked? So how do Ukrainian families, citizens, companies manage to pass through this winter under brutal attacks? And but then, of course, there will be, at some point, I hope at least, the reconstruction. And what is important for me, coming from the climate and energy perspective, is that the reconstruction that will need to happen should already consider the pathways that we will collectively take in Europe towards climate neutrality. Because essentially all of the investments that we are taking in the energy system into infrastructure today are investments preparing the transition to climate neutrality, because 2050 is very, very close from an investment cycle perspective. So what does this mean? In the power sector, it essentially means that we have a number of countries with different starting points in the energy mix, but broadly speaking, we are moving away from coal towards renewables, with nuclear playing different roles in different countries in Europe. In the buildings, it is all about increasing efficiency of buildings and replacing fossil heating systems by clean ones, particularly heat pumps, electricity-led heat pumps, to then have clean heating and renewable district heating systems, or green district heating systems. In the industry as well, the whole cluster of processes of 200 degrees and less, which we refer to as low temperature heat, the lead technology to decarbonize there are heat pumps. And then for the higher temperature processes where electrification doesn't help, according to current technology, hydrogen plays a critical role. And going forward, renewable hydrogen. Now, what does it mean for any preparation for reconstruction? I think, as I said, generally speaking, one should use all opportunities in designing reconstruction programs to take choices, to make decisions that already prepare in the direction of the transition to climate neutrality. So specifically, when it is about rebuilding houses, do something about the energy efficiency performance of the house, if possible. Put solar PV on the rooftop, replace fossil heating systems, if possible, by heat pumps. In the case of the power system, there is, as Mr. Nicolescu said, a very significant renewable energy potential in Ukraine, particularly onshore and offshore wind. If all is developed, this is exceeding what Ukraine needs, actually, as electricity on current demand levels. And of course, some of these renewable power could be exported to other European neighbors. It could also be used for renewable hydrogen production, and then become an important enabler for the industrial transition, for the industry in Ukraine, particularly the steel industry. Renewable hydrogen will play a role going forward, also for fertilizer production. this plays an important role. And then, of course, there could be some exports of renewable hydrogen to Europe. Just to recall that the hydrogen strategy of Europe relies to quite some extent, about 50% of all the hydrogen that we foresee in Europe by 2030 is seen to come from imports. So there could be some role as well for renewable hydrogen from Ukraine to Europe. And I already spoke to the industry transition. So if there is an opportunity to replace industrial assets, particularly steel plants that have been destroyed, there is a real opportunity to modernize the asset base when doing the reconstruction work. But of course, all of this needs to be prepared and planned. I believe there is, and this was kind of the main message I took from this reconstruction conference that took place a few days ago in Berlin, jointly by G7 and European Commission. There seems to be a lot of appetite to support the reconstruction of Ukraine after the war has stopped. But of course, what to support, this is really dependent on the ideas, the concrete plans that are developed by the Ukrainian society, companies, municipalities, cities, and the federal government.
Thank you.
So thank you. That's my first intervention.
Thank you for this input. And I think we can move to Q&A session. Oh, yeah, we have a question.
Thank you. My name is Sergei Gerasimchuk. I'm from Ukrainian Prism, and my question goes to Razvan Nicolescu. Razvan, Mykhailo already mentioned the Romanian plans to extract more gas, and I want to put a very precise question about Neptune Deep project. How would you assess its chances for implementation, bearing in mind first the exit of Exxon from the project, and second, militarization of the Black Sea? Thank you.
Should I answer or?
Yeah.
So the project, in my view, has 90% chances to be completed in 5 years and 60% chances to be completed in 3-4 years. The militarization has a negative impact, of course, including probably the costs with the protection of the operations are higher. Neptune is not far from also from the place where the Turkish company, the state-owned company, has been conducting some exploration activities, and they are pretty advanced as well. So my forecast is in about 4 or 5 years we will have minimum 9 BCM more produced in the Black Sea.
Thank you. And another question from Maciej.
Yeah, I have also a question to our Romanian colleague about electricity this time. What do you know about any plans, specific plans about restoration of a high voltage line from Piwdenno-Ukraińska to Isaccza?
I think there is I mean, on the priority list, I don't have exact information about the timeline, but in my view, this is part of the Ukrainian efforts and the European efforts to connect the Ukraine to the ENTSO-E, the European system of the transport operators. I hope it will happen soon. But again, in the region, in my view, we should move from the centralized type of projects to a more decentralized type of projects. And probably with another location, we should discuss together Romanians, Bulgarians, people from the Ukraine, from Turkey, and with the support of the European Union, how we can transform Black Sea into a power generator sea. And we should learn here from Germany, from Denmark, from others who transform their seas, from Poland recently, on what they did in order to use the potential for renewable, especially for wind offshore.
Thank you.
Hello, Igor Brelyan. I'm Inform. I have a question about renewables, and like almost all of them were located in the south of Ukraine, Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, and almost all of them were destroyed due to hostilities of the Russia-Ukraine war. And how do you see the perspectives of participation of business as well as maybe state companies of our partners in our future recovery? Thank you.
May I answer this one?
Who would like to answer?
Kristian, I'm in the car, so I can focus a bit more. If I may answer this one.
So, please.
I happen to be a director for one of the Slovak-Ukrainian joint ventures who are having a power plant, a solar power plant in Izmail. So luckily, our wasn't destroyed, and I hope it will remain so. But drawing from my experience on the interaction with guaranteed buyer in Ukraine and in general the state and the support for renewables, how it was designed, I think it would be wise not to rely so much on in the future on feed-in tariffs and all that state support that still is in place, doesn't really work. A bit of money is, or approximately 1/3 of money is being paid out. I think there should be much more, focus on the PPAs, on letting those who build solar power plants to compete on the market basis, to be able to offer its electricity to the market, not relying or not being in the balancing group of the guaranteed buyer. I think this is a model forward because unfortunately, if there were no money or not sufficient money to pay out the green tariffs until now, there will certainly be even less money after the war. So I think it should be wise to redesign the support mechanism is currently in place, seriously redesigned. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, we have the raised hands of Matthias book, please.
Just to echo this, renewables have become very cheap. It's not really the cost of the technology. The only challenge for developing, scaling fast renewables potential is to have some, let's say, regulatory and investment certainty because of the high upfront costs. So, and I think there it's a mix of providing a good market environment, where, as Kristian was saying, PPAs can be used to scale. So enabling the merchant-based development of renewables, but also I believe the international donor community could play a role in what we call de-risking some of the investments that may at the moment still be much more difficult to develop otherwise. So with those two things, I think there has been a major development across the continent, moving away from feed-in tariff regimes to what we call contracts for difference, where essentially there is like a safety net for the developer given by the government, which normally is not being used and which can work both ways. So if the generators, as we're not seeing in Europe, are making what we call surplus revenues caused by the very high electricity prices, that also then some of the revenues would be kept in compensation for giving some minimum guarantees of income to those developing those capacities. So what we call contracts for difference plus PPAs plus enabling market environment plus some financial de-risking probably would be a very good package for fast scaling.
Thank you, Maciej, and then Mr. Nicolescu.
Yes, thank you. So quick hard security perspective on this issue with renewables. Yes, more than, if I'm not wrong, 80% of wind farms have been destroyed or occupied. But when you break it up, only 8% have been destroyed. The rest is occupied. While, for example, when you look at statistics of conventional power plants, about 30, now it's even more, 30% of generation power have been destroyed or damaged. And you can clearly see right now that Russians target mostly conventional power plants because they are just easy target, much more easier than renewables because they are just not so centralized. So in fact, I would even risk a hypothesis that these renewables prove that they are more resilient in this on this issue. Of course, there is a huge question about balancing because, as we know, renewables have been switched off at the very beginning of Russian full-scale invasion. But if you look at the generation statistics, the level of usage of renewables was at the same level as before war. So it proved that it can work even during wartime.
Thank you. Also, I'd like to mention that there are no new estimations that around 40% of all conventional facilities are damaged or destroyed or cannot operate. So, yeah, that's an issue. Please, Mr. Nicolescu.
I'm gonna be very quickly. Because I want to express my support for what was said before on the renewable point. I just want to add one element that, in my view, the Ukraine could also be a place, I mean, in this reconstruction program that I hope it will happen soon. So the Ukraine could be a place where some equipment could be produced, because what we have to learn from this bad experience with Putin and Gazprom is that we cannot afford in Europe to keep a dependence or to change the Russian dependence with the Chinese dependence in terms of equipment. So we have to be able to produce the equipment, the PV, the inverters here locally in Europe. So we need to learn from the past.
Thank you, Mr. Nicolescu, and I would like to thank all of us, yeah, and all of our speakers. Thank you for this interesting discussion, and as a final remark, I want to announce releasing of our paper, which was elaborated by our team in partnership with representation of the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung in Ukraine. It will be published soon, maybe a week or two, and you're welcome to read. It will be available both in Ukrainian and English. Thank you.